So we are going to try this for the third time. Hopefully the third time is the charm. We're going to do our quote of the day from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And then we're going to look at the book Socialism by Ludwig von Mises. And this crashed twice. ECam Live, thanks a lot for crashing my stream twice. Let's see if they crashed again. We're going to give this a shot and see what happens. Ready to go.
It's time to remember that universal college education, trade school, a federal jobs guarantee, exploration of a universal basic income were not all proposed in 2016. They were proposed in 1940 by the President of the United States, by the Democratic President of the United States.
So she's proud of these things. I think she talked about Social Security. Social Security is a absolutely horrible program. It's a ridiculously high tax. They take 7.5% from you, another 7.5% on your behalf from your employer. And so what's that, 15%? I don't know. I think they cut a little bit of it recently under Bush or something. But it's a big chunk of money. And I did a video on this where I said I want to opt out of Social Security because if I invested that money over the course of my life, even if you were minimum wage, you invest that money over the course of my life, I looked at my own career, right? And for a long time, like most people before college, I was making minimum wage or just slightly better. And then I looked at what I've been making so far now. And if I were to be able to just opt out of Social Security, I'd have more than $1 million, way more than $1 million, several $1 million by the time I retire. Even if you made minimum wage your whole life, you could still get over $1 million by the time you retire. That's money that would be able to provide a much more in terms of sustaining you throughout the rest of your life, and you'd be able to give it to your kids when you died. Whereas Social Security, if you die before you get Social Security, you get nothing. You get nothing. They take it all. Supposedly there's this trust fund filled with your money. Well, if there's a trust fund filled with my money, then when I die, there should be money that I should get and be able to pass on to my kids or my wife or whatever. But no, you can't do that with Social Security. This is horrible. Horrible program. Okay, so let's play a little bit more from her, and then I want to get to von Mises, because this is something I like to do on Too Uncommon. I'm doing like this quote of the day thing recently. I like to take like in vogue sort of socialists like this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and sort of juxtapose them against really ridiculously brilliant philosophers and authors like von Mises and Ayn Rand and these types, and Adam Smith and these types of folks. And so we're going to play the rest of this clip, and then we're going to get into some like actual wisdom from not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the person with like 1,400 names. I don't know why you would want to do the hyphenated name thing. Like, how's that going to work when she has a daughter and then her daughter marries some kid? And then what? They're going to have Alexander Ocasio-Cortez Smith, Alexander Ocasio-Cortez Smith Jones, whatever. I don't know how that works. But, okay, we're going to keep going with this then. Ready to go.
These are not new ideas. We are picking up where we last left off, when we were last most powerful, when we were our last greatest. The Democratic Party, it's time to own that our party was the one of the Great Society, of the New Deal, of the Civil Rights Act.
The Civil Rights Act.
That's who we are, and it's time for...
Okay, just a little fact check from the Civil Rights Act comment. So Civil Rights Act was passed. More Republicans than Democrats voted for all the Civil Rights Amendment and Civil Rights Act to the Constitution. And I think it was like the 50s, 60s, 70s. They had like 3 different pieces of legislation. I did a video on that too. All of them, Republicans voted about 80% for each of them. Democrats still voted a majority. It was like 66%-ish. And not only that, but Senator Byrd, which was Democrat, Senator, hello, Southern Democrat, he filibustered the Civil Rights Act. So, okay. So give me a break with trying to say that you're the party of the civil rights and all this kind of stuff. Because, yeah, anyway. Okay, so I think we've probably had enough of her. I don't know. Now we're going to play a little bit more of her. And then we're going to get into some actual brilliance.
For us to come home. Because when working people realize that we are fighting for them the most, they will fight for us too. That is what we have shown. The way that we do this is when we all go home, recommit ourselves, and there is no district too red for us to flip. Thank you very much.
Move. It's trying to. All right, here we go. So now we're going to talk about some actual brilliance from von Mises in the book Socialism. It was recommended to me by this guy named Roger Ver, who's a big Bitcoin guy. I've talked about him before a little bit. Okay, so von Mises has a little something to say about this kind of like socialism thing that Ocasio-Cortez is talking about. And so, by the way, so she's a democratic socialist. And this is kind of like this socialist movement that's been spreading a lot lately. It's being pushed by progressives like Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, those folks. And I've been pretty critical of those guys. So here's von Mises' kind of answer to this type of socialism. So under democratic socialism, you get to vote for some politician or group of politicians, and then they decide how to spend all of the money in the economy. And they decide where to distribute it and everything, right? So they decide what the money gets spent on. So here's von Mises' answer to democratic socialism. And it's something that he calls consumer democracy. Okay? So I got to do this in the English accent because it's really hoity-toity, even though I think the guy's German, but it doesn't matter. When we call a capitalist society a consumer democracy, what we mean is the power to dispose of the means of production which belongs to, which belongs to the entrepreneurs and capitalists can only be acquired by the means of consumer ballot held daily in the marketplace. So here's how he explains this. So in case you didn't understand what the hell he just said, he explains it super clearly right here. Every child who prefers one toy over another puts its voting paper in the ballot box, which will eventually decide who shall become captain of industry. So every single one of us, all the way down to even a child who picks which toy they want in a store, decides who they want to elect as captain of all of the various industries in society. So when you choose an iPhone versus, the latest Microsoft phone, or when you choose a Samsung over an iPhone or whatever, BlackBerry, whoever you choose, you are in effect electing a captain of industry. You are deciding who you want to direct the means of production. When you decide where you want to invest your retirement, I just heard this ad on the Ben Shapiro show. He was talking about, what was it called? It's this new app where you basically can, every time you make a purchase, it puts a portion of that. It's called Robinhood. It takes a little piece of every purchase. You go to buy a beer at a bar. It takes 50 cents out of that beer that you bought and invests it in the stock market for you. Whatever. And so my point is, you, the consumer, get to elect who you want to run your investments. You, the consumer, get to elect who you want to build your phone, who you want to build your house, who you want to, make your cornflakes in the morning. Like, each of us gets to vote with our dollars. Okay, so, but some of you, and I'm sure Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Young Turks, and some of the other socialists out there would probably say, well, but it's not fair because some people have more dollars to vote with than others. And so here is von Mises' rebuttal to that in his book Socialism. True, there is no equality of vote in this democracy. Some have plural votes, but the greater voting power, which the disposal of greater income implies, can only be acquired and maintained by the test of election. This is the consumption of the rich that the consumption of the rich weighs more heavily than the consumption of the poor, though there is a strong tendency to overestimate considerably the amount consumed by the well-to-do classes in proportion to the masses, is in itself an election result. So, in other words, the way you get rich is by serving other people better than average. So if I become wealthy, it's because I've done a really, really good job of serving the most people. I've done a better job of building a company. I've done a better job of delivering services to those who need services, whatever the hell it is. My dad, he's a carpenter, right? He's a really, really good carpenter. He's so good, he was able to hire and train very good carpenters. He's able to attract some of the best carpenters in the area. Condors, by the way. You should check out Condors if you need a door replaced or if you need something remodeled, or well, he doesn't do remodels a lot. Or if you want to build a house and you're a builder, freaking call Condors and he'll hook you up. Okay? But he's a great carpenter, and over the course of decades of his life, he's learned to be a good carpenter and a good leader and a builder of a business, and now he's starting to make decent money. That didn't happen overnight. And it's not like, any wealth that he has, and he's not like super mega rich, by the way, but he's doing pretty well. He's starting to kick it into gear, right? Any wealth that he creates isn't just like dumb luck. It didn't just fall out of the sky. It's because he's doing a better job than the average person of serving customers, of leading employees, and even serving employees, right? Because if you don't serve employees, they leave. They say, F you, boss, I'm going to go somewhere else. If you want to attract the best employees, you have to be good to them, or you have to pay them much more than other employers are able to pay them. The cheaper way is just not to be an a-hole to your employees, by the way. But paying them well helps too. Okay, so I was in the middle of this quote. Consumption of the rich. Okay, since in a capitalist society, wealth can be acquired and maintained only by response corresponding to the consumer's requirements. Thus, the wealth of a successful businessman is always the result of a consumer's plebiscite. And once acquired, this wealth can be retained only if it is employed in a way regarded by consumers as the most beneficial to them. In other words, even if you just won the lottery, or a bag of money dropped out of the sky and landed in your lap, or whatever, you inherited it from your parents, like Donald Trump inherited a bunch of money, right? He inherited like $200 million from his parents. If Donald Trump or the lottery winner or whatever misuses that money, does not invest that money in a way that benefits their fellow society, their fellow mankind, that money just sort of goes away. They end up. That's why I think I heard a statistic that said something like 65 or 75% of lottery winners actually end up bankrupt within 7 years. And the reason they end up bankrupt within 7 years is because they don't know how to manage that money. They're not accustomed to managing wealth. Just because you're handed $10 million or even $50 million doesn't mean you're going to be rich the rest of your life. I mean, if you go around and blow it, like Michael Jackson was a great example of this. He literally made a couple $100 million over the course of his life. But when he died, his estate was broke. Literally had more liabilities than assets. That's why they had all these electronic hologram shows with Michael Jackson, because they were trying to pay off the debt of the estate. And then actually have a little bit left over for the people who were inheriting it. I don't even know who inherited it. He didn't have any. He had some kids, right? He did have a couple kids. It's kind of scary. But okay, anyway, I don't want to get too far off that track. I got one more little quote from Von Mises, and then we're going to call it a day on the quote of the day from True Uncommon. All right, so the average man is both better informed. Okay, so this is like kind of a response to this idea that democratic socialists, when you have a democratic socialist, or when you elect anybody in a democracy, you can either elect, typically it's two people you can elect. You can either elect Trump or Hillary, right? You can elect Mitt Romney or Barack Obama, right? So you've got this two people that you elect, and maybe you don't like either one of them. Maybe you only like 20% of what Mitt Romney says, but you like 5% of what Barack Obama says. Or maybe you're the reverse. Maybe you're like, I like 30% of what Barack Obama says, but I only like 5% of what Donald Trump says. Whatever. It wasn't even between them. It was between Hillary and Trump. Whatever. You get the idea, right? And so when there's this election between two people, nobody gets everything that they want. So this is a response to that. The average man is both better informed and less corruptible in the decision he makes as a consumer than a voter in a political election. There are said to be voters who, faced with the decision between free trade and protection, the gold standard and inflation, are unable to view all that the decision implies. The buyer who has chose between different sorts of beer or makes a chocolate choice has an easier job of it. Okay, so the bottom line on that is, like, it's much easier for me to make decisions and run my own life. Like, I know what kind of car I want to drive. I know what kind of chocolate I want to eat. I know what kind of beer I want to drink. A voter, may not really even be qualified. A lot of voters probably aren't. I mean, if you look at Twitter, read some of the nonsense that is spouted on Twitter. And it becomes very apparent very quickly that there are a lot of people out there voting and making their minds known that don't know shit. And probably shouldn't be voting. Maybe some of you out there are watching me and you think, hey, Mike, you don't know shit. You shouldn't be voting. But I am, right? Wouldn't you rather have a smaller government so that you can keep more of your own money, so that you can have more choice over how you spend your own money, rather than having Donald Trump, or rather than having Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or whoever in Congress decide how to spend your cash or how to invest for your retirement or whatever? Hey, that's just me. So this has been Quote of the Day. If I haven't really come up with a good tagline at the end. I used to have a common sense, blah, blah, blah thing. For those of you who've been around for a while, you know what that is. But let's just plug my stuff. Check me out on steemit.com at 2uncommon. Check me out on Twitter at 2uncommon. Check me out on Facebook. I think it's still on Common Sense USA, but I'm going to change it to 2uncommon. And everywhere else, let's see, what's the other one? Oh, yeah, iTunes. If you're on the road, you can listen to me on iTunes at 2uncommon. So check it out, and I will see you on the next Quote of the Day at 2uncommon. This is Mike Kahn. Take it easy.